Friday. I'm always happy about Friday. I don't know about you. But hey, thank you so much for tuning in again. Today, Nelly and I, we're having another fantastic episode of course. Today, we're talking about our children, their safety. And today, we are going to be talking on the topic, are we raising, surviving, or thriving kids? Are we raising, surviving, or thriving kids? Because I know that as parents, sometimes we want everything to give our kids everything, but are we really giving them what is needed? So that is what we're going to be focusing on today. And for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Peggy Barre. I am the founder of Arise and Thrive Academy, a domestic abuse practitioner. And I'm going to pass it to Nelly to introduce herself. Over to you, Nelly.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Nelly Kwasunwi. I am a social worker, transformational life coach, and co-director for Hand in Hand Community CIC.
Okay, Nelly, thank you so much for that. Before we continue, Nelly, I don't know if, it will be nice. I just want to make sure that our viewers are actually getting the link because I can't see it on the, let me search for you.
Not yet.
Have you shared it on Nelly?
Peggy, just continue with the intro. Let me share.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Okay. So yes, viewers, today we are talking about an interesting topic, about whether we are raising, surviving, or thriving kid. And Nelly and I, we're going to be sharing more of our experiences because at one point in my life, I remember I was just surviving. In fact, if you ask me at that time, I would boldly say, you know what? No, I was just raising, surviving kids because you know what? There are times where you can't get away from that survivor mode. You just have to because of circumstances. But hey, that is why we want to be conscious. We want to learn and how to be conscious of the fact that we are in a survivor mode and what are the effects of being in survivor mode and how can we now swap into a thriving mode as parents. So while Nelly is actually sorting out the link, we are gonna, I really don't want us to dive in too much, Nelly, if we haven't shared the links, just so our viewers can catch up with us. If it is on your page, Nelly, if it's on your page, if you share the link with me and I can share it while we dive,
Yeah,
then we can dive in.
I've tagged you,
You've tagged
Peggy.
me. Okay. Bear with me, 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 bear with me. Okay, I've got the
Nearly
link.
there.
We're nearly there. I just want to copy the link. Right, how can I copy the link? Okay, copy link now. I'm gonna be there. Bear with me, bear with me. Two moms are trying to get over technology.
Of course. That's the way to go now.
Oh my goodness me. You've got to keep learning and learning. Right.
Yeah.
I hope that can post the link. Right.
Have you got it?
If that is going to post it on the Arise and Thrive Academy. Right. Anyway, hopefully anybody can join. All right. Do you know what? I'm not even going to have to navigate through that. Anyway, let's crack on. Right. So, Anneli, I thought maybe we could start. I don't know if you've got any statistics, but like we were talking, I was trying to look for some statistics that we could actually dwell on. But the most of the statistic I was finding was all about mental health, like the number of children who are going through mental health. And we want to be very careful not to we want to be very careful to make sure that we don't give generalistic statistics, which are not associated with with raising children in a survival mode. So as a result of that, we're just going to dive straight into definition. What is actually surviving parenting and what is actually thriving parenting? Because I feel that it is important for us to differentiate the two, so that we now discuss how what is the cause of it and how can we navigate away from it. I was looking at the definition by Dr. Christina Hubert, and she wrote an article the article was on postpartum survival mode. And she defined survivor parenting actually as it is a parenting style that focuses on the immediate daily struggle of just getting through the day, and that mood is the mood where we just want to get the basic needs. In fact, when I was reading about it, I just thought of myself, that the time where I moved out of my my relationship broke down, and I was struggling to survive with my children. That was a mood that I was actually functioning on at that time. That moment where you just want to get by, you just want to provide something for your children to eat, you just want a roof over your head. And she goes further to say that it is usually a temporary response to stress, to anxiety, to exhaustion, or to burnout, and it can be very damaging if we do not take control of it, and if we're not conscious of it. So that is one. So we talk about the survival mode. On the other hand, thriving parenting is characterized by intention, joy, fostering long-term growth and connection with your children. And it is always about a proactiveness, intentional state that allows for both parent and child to connect and grow together. So that is the difference. So one is just about getting by, which is more fostered by stress, anxiety, exhaustion, and all whatnot. The other one, which is thriving, is more about intentional, it's about connection, it's about joy, and that willingness to make sure that you create an environment where you and your children can connect together. So that is the difference. So Nelly, I don't know whether you want to add something on that.
Yeah, so on the survival parenting, it's coming from a place of fear, whereby that is from your background of trauma, stress, burnout. I don't want to repeat what Peggy has said, but it's coming from a place of fear where you have that survival instinct. You just want to do things the manageable way for that day to go through, and parents focus on the result. So then they miss in between, they miss the process. Whereas with the thriving parenting, the parents are emotionally available. They help their children to become independent. Children have the opportunity to explore their environment. And the impact is that the children feel more confident, high self-esteem. They can manage their emotions, and they don't look only for short-term solutions. They look for long-term goals. What do they aspire to be in how many years ahead? Whereas it's very different from surviving parents and their children, whereby you as a surviving a child from surviving parenting experience, the child might not even know what they want the next day, because probably the child doesn't even know when and how they will even have their next meal. So then they are not in a position to think of what they will want in a year's time, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. So I think those are the main two differences. But the impact on the children is very, very important. Yeah. Becky has already said some, but the impact on the child is that the child focuses on their safety. The child is always worried because they don't know what is going to happen. The child becomes very obedient, and the survivor parenting, they want their child to do as they have been told. And the parents get really frustrated because remember, the parents are coming from a place of fear. So if they want the child to do something and the child doesn't do it exactly the way they want, since they struggle to manage their own emotions, they get really frustrated. Sometimes they can say the child is being difficult just because the child probably doesn't understand and maybe try to question, but the parent, because of their own internal struggles, they really struggle, and the child will develop that avoidance, because instead of taking risk, the child will avoid taking risk because there's the misinterpretation of failure. If a child fails, they'll easily get in trouble because the parent will be interpreting that failure from a negative point of view, whereby they miss the learning opportunities. Whereas with thriving parenting, they have a different lens of looking at things. They are more intentional, they are conscious, and they know that failure, or they will consider that failure provides learning opportunities whereby both the parent and the child, they will learn something to be much better. The parent will provide emotional support to the child. They'll be emotionally available. So the child is able to express themselves, how they are feeling, and even feel confident to challenge the parent, question the parent. And it will not end only with the parent, even with other family members, other people that the child comes in contact with, the child will feel confident to express themselves. And that is some of the characteristics for thriving parenting, the impact that it has on their children.
Amazing. I was actually looking at there some key differences at the glance, which I think you've covered most of it, which we talked. I was actually doing some research, and it's saying that so in terms of survival and thriving parenting, the primary goal, like we've said, is for surviving parenting, the primary goal is just keeping kids alive or safe. And as Nelly said, for the thriving parenting is fostering growth and independence. And then another feature is daily experience. For surviving parenting is on autopilot, reactive, and in chaos, just like Nelly have said. And for thriving parenting is intentional, present, connected. And it goes further to talk about discipline. You know, when it comes to discipline, for surviving parenting is inconsistent and explosive. But for thriving parenting is consistent, nurturing, and teaching. And what about energy level, this is something that caught my attention. When it comes about energy level, for surviving parenting is drained and burned out. But for thriving parenting is energized and purposeful. And then, of course, when it comes to self-care, for surviving parenting is non-existent and feels guilty. But for thriving parenting is viewed as necessary to parent well. When I was reading at these, and I was like, you know what, sometimes as parents, it's very, very important to know the two. Because if we know only one, or maybe at that point in time, like I said, there are sometimes that Nelly, we cannot escape it. It happens. You know, there are days that we get up in the morning, you say, you know what, for whatever reason, that day you are parenting on a survival mode. And you know, maybe you're stressed, you're burned out, and you feel like, you know what, I don't want to think, I don't even want to in fact, I just want to get by today. But the key is that it's about recognizing the fact that you are on a surviving mode. And how can you come back to a thriving mode? Because if we constantly parent on survival mode, that is where we miss the opportunity to build that connection with our children and actually teach our children the skills, just like you said, those skills that they can actually use it to navigate life as they grow or as they become adult. So it's very important that we learn the two and be able to know that, hey, Peggy, you are on surviving mode today, and no matter what, make sure that you drift, you shift from that mode to the next mode. So it is very important. I don't know whether Nelly.
Yeah, I think you've raised some very important points, but what I want to talk about is just for us to differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about surviving parenting and as well as thriving parenting.
Yeah.
However, we know that every day can never be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you have talked about survival mode. Survival mode is very different from survival parenting because it's commonly said, we have good days and we have bad days, but it's very different from our parenting because parenting is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But then if it's that survival mode, one day you might wake up and you might not want to do anything. We can say that is the survival mode, but it doesn't mean that you are not using a thriving parenting style.
Mm.
And even if you are on the survival mode on one day, you already know that yes, you want to be intentional, you want to be conscious. So then you start questioning yourself. And no 2 days will be the same. And what you've done today, it must not necessarily be what you'll do the next day. And I think that is one of the differences with the survival parenting and the thriving parenting, because with the thriving parenting, they want to be present. Unlike with the survival parenting who focus on the result and they miss out the day-to-day. I know you talked about the day-to-day experiences. For the survival mode, they miss out the day-to-day experiences. So I just thought that I explained that there is a difference between the different types of parenting and a mode, because a mode is short-term, but the parenting is a lifestyle choice that people make, whether consciously or unconsciously, but then it's how they transfer their parenting skills onto their children and the impact.
No, that is right. And thank you for making that clarification. Nelly, do you know, up to now, I'm still trying to make sure that I post on Arise and Thrive Academy. I haven't been able to. I don't
Oh,
know why, for some reason, I've not been able to get us on Arise and Thrive Academy. And I'm sure there's some people there that are waiting. But yeah, so I think the next thing that we wanted to talk about is the some of the ways, like how do we foster that surviving, or how do we foster thriving parenting, or what are some of the things that we do to make sure to promote surviving parenting, if that makes sense. So I think we should focus on the thriving. Should we focus on the thriving bit?
I think let's start with the survivor, because the reason I'm talking about survivor is because there is, I don't know the statistics, but probably is where I'm working, because like a social worker, we see mostly people or families who are struggling. And then again, with my role as a transformational life coach, again, it's people who are struggling. And like looking on social media, you can see how people are being vulnerable ignorantly. So I feel let's talk about the survivor parenting, because some people are surviving, but they don't really realize that they are surviving, and it might be having a significant impact on themselves and their children without them even realizing. Because I think I'll just share this, which to back up what I'm talking about. Like recently, I was speaking with someone who was talking about their experiences, that they had been they lived with they grew up with their parents, but they realized that their parents did not even know them, though they spent all their life with their parents, but they felt that their parents did not even know them, because the parents, yes, provided the house, provided their daily meal and things like that. But then internally, this was what this person was saying, that within them, they just felt that their parents did not understand them because the parents had expectations that they need to go to work, bring in the money, which they did, but then they, they didn't feel happy because, yes, they were making the money, but internally, they just felt empty inside. So it started when they went to university. They went to university. That was their first chance of having freedom. But because they had not learned those skills, they didn't even know how to manage it. And then they struggled even to attend lessons. And of course, their results, it showed on their results. And they they struggled to tell their parents because that communication was not there. They felt that the way their parents were, the parents were either you go to school or you are sleeping, but you must be doing something so you get the money. And it got to a time when they stopped communicating with their parents because they realized that they had been doing things just to please their parents, but they couldn't be doing that anymore because they realized they were getting older, they were feeling just empty within them. So those are some of the things which, because I am seeing a lot of people coming to me with such experiences, and parents might be thinking that they are providing the best for their children when they are much younger, when they are living on, or when they are surviving. But then it has an impact on the child, and especially when they get to adulthood, because like we've talked about self-esteem and confidence, it affects the children. But then the parent might not know because they are struggling in themselves and then trying to provide the best for their child or their children.
And Nelly, when you talk about that, honestly, that just something just hit me. You know, sometimes as parents, we feel like, yes, we most parents will work hard. I've seen parents that work hard. They work hard, they make the money, they bring the money home, they provide whatever thing their kids need. And sometimes I feel that is where parents feel like they are actually in a thriving mood, or they are practicing thriving, or how that is it thriving parenting,
Having
like for
parenting.
yes, but then they feel like, you know what, they are thriving, and so as a result they are providing the need for their kids, whatever thing their kids need school wise, they provide it. But then if you ask them at that moment, I think they will rightly say, you know what, I am providing a thriving parenting lifestyle for my children. But no, you are not. The fact that you are having the money, the fact that you provide everything that your children need, there is something that is missing. And you talk about that connection, you talk about that emotion, you talk about giving that child that independence and teaching that child their voice, their values, self-esteem, teaching that child to thrive. The question is, would that child be able to thrive beyond the house? When that child leaves the house, or when that child leaves and they're living on their own, would they be able to thrive based on what you as a parent have actually taught them or kind of instill in them? So that is really something that, like you said, this is where most parents would actually fail or not recognize the fact that this is what is happening. Because we end up, that child leaves the home. Yes, that child leaves the home. That child would have maybe had the best grades, right? They would have had the best grades in school. And then they left the house, even maybe to the best university because of the best grades that they've had. But then, what is that child living with internally? That is a big question.
And just to add to that, it's still a myth within the Afro-Caribbean community talking about emotions, mental health. We don't talk about it. So in most households, most Afro-Caribbean households, and even in the Western world, it doesn't feel natural to talk about emotions because we feel it, but it's not being expressed. And a lot of
Mm.
people struggle with it because emotions come up. People don't invite the emotions. It's natural. But then if we are not taught how to manage those emotions, how to express those emotions, we find ourselves in a difficult situation, especially when we have, like, if our children have the freedom whereby they've never had the freedom, they haven't developed those social skills, they haven't developed the basic skills. So then what
Mm.
do? They are having those sensations in their bodies, but then they don't know what to do. So the way they'll react is anyhow. And unfortunately, it goes the wrong way. So
Mm.
this, I think it goes to the question you've asked, what is it that the child has taken from the parents? I think for me, my what I'm working towards is to educate parents to move away from material things. It is good, but the emotional side of things has not been addressed for so many decades.
Mm.
So parents need to start learning to express first their own emotions and then for their children to copy and also express their emotions. Because like recently, you'll see that there's a lot of reports worldwide around like offenses, which stems from not being able to manage emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And because people have not developed those skills, so then they don't know how to manage with them. But if we start talking about them, people being open to learn, because it's all about learning, skills are for, if you want to learn a particular skill, you will be able to learn it. So then is to move away from the survival parenting, first of all, from the survival mode, and then to the thriving. Because like you've said, if you ask parents now, they will say, I provide everything, and which is what parents say, I provide everything for my child or everything for my family, but they don't even appreciate. Why don't they appreciate? So that's where that emotion come in, because they feel empty. It's like you want to buy a mansion for someone, but then that connection is not there. The person doesn't feel worthy. They will just neglect it. Whereas if you have that connection with someone and then you buy them, say, a mug, they will appreciate it because it's not just the physical thing, it's that emotional connection. Because you cannot you cannot you can express your emotions, but it will be difficult for someone to actually know what those emotions are. So it's just that feeling. So I think we need to go back. Whether there's a go back, I don't know. We need to learn how to express ourselves, because in a way it will help us to learn to regulate our emotions. And then
Yeah.
we will be moving from survival to thriving. And I think like with the African Caribbean community, like with the culture, there are certain aspects within the culture that individuals are just bound to be living in the survival mode and then
Mm-hmm.
their survival lifestyle,
Yeah.
which a lot needs to be done around that. And I think as individuals, okay, talking, for instance, like women, we know the history of women where women didn't have the voice. Women were not allowed education and things like that. And good a thing like this, suffragette, there's been lots and lots of things going on. And now women are having their being able to speak, though to an extent, some women are overdoing it. They are now suppressing men, which doesn't help. But the idea I'm bringing this is for us to become aware, to start shifting from the sub. First of all, identifying the characteristics of survivor, and then to start moving to thriving, because survivor is coming from a place of fear, because that's how the ego functions, because the ego thrives on fear, and that is where the survivor instinct comes from, where we have talked about it. So yeah, it's for us to start moving, first of all identifying the survivor, and then start moving, making that gradual shift from survivor to thriving.
That's absolutely amazing, and that is so true. There's something that I want to pick up on, but why I do that, if you could just try and see again if you can tag Arise and Thrive Academy, that would be great.
Oh,
Because I still can't see hand to hand. I cannot
hand
see the
in hand,
video
I
on
have.
Arise. You've tagged
Oh,
Arise and Thrive Academy.
yeah, I have tagged Arise. I tagged Arise and Thrive. Let me
Okay. I don't know, for some reason I'm not seeing it at my end, but anyway.
let me
Another
look
thing that
again.
when you talk, it came to my mind, Nelly, was the fact that we need to actually look at I think one of the ways to actually break away or shift from that surviving parenting mindset is, again, from our own experiences, because sometimes most of us as parents, we may have grown up in that same environment where our parents were actually, in fact, they parented us on that surviving parenting style, and then we grow up and then we kind of copy that. We think that is normal, and like you say, most Afro-Caribbean families, they feel that that parenting style is normal. They don't see anything bad with it, you know. And you will see that is why they will not even want to embrace whatever thing you're telling them. They'll say, you know what, no, what you're trying to preach to me is this westernized kind of parenting where we just leave children to go and do whatever thing they want to do. And no, it is about, there's something called boundaries, and there's something, you talk about emotion. If we as parents, we are not able or capable, or we haven't learned to manage our own emotions, how are we going to be able to manage the emotions of our own children? And how are we even able to sit and discuss their emotions with them? Because we ourselves as parents will not even feel comfortable. We may not be able to even answer some of the questions that they will ask us, or some of the clarity that they want from us in terms of managing their emotions. So this is why it's very important that we need to go back and look at our own, the environment where we grew up, the type of parenting style that we grew up, and then ask ourselves, am I replicating that same parenting style in my own life right now? What is the effect? What is the impact? Because don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of some good side of it, but again, we should not be complacent, and we should actually be evaluating how is that good side, what percentage of it, and how is it affecting our children positively or negatively. So I feel that it is that moment of being conscious of what is the style that we're parenting our kids. Is it helping them or not? And if not, what is the alternative, and what can we do differently to make sure that, and this kind of also, I own a cleaning company, and Nelly, if I tell you the number of homes, like the number of student accommodations that we go into, this student accommodation are students are living in this accommodation, and most of these children, you would tell that these are children who came from the quote unquote the wealthy homes. And I'm sure it is from those homes that their parents thought that they were giving them everything, and they were parenting those children with that thriving parenting lifestyle. There was one that, in fact, I went there and I wept. I wept because The one room, if you imagine one bedroom with a shower and a small kitchen, that child did not have any place to study. The child had, in fact, I'll call her a child, even though she was an adult. She said she was 19. She was in her university year one, right? And there was no place for that young girl to study. In fact, she had her bed, and on her bed, there was no bed sheet, and that bed was her eating table. It was where she slept. It was where she studied, because every other bit of the house was full with junk. So she will buy junk food, she eats it, and then she doesn't throw it. She just pile and pile and pile. There were flies everywhere, maggots, leftover food, maggots everywhere. And this child said that, in fact, why do I keep calling her? I would say she's a child, This lady, she said to me that in fact, she was doing doctorate. She was in her year one. She wanted to become a doctor, right? And mind you, the parents were abroad. The parents were giving her everything. And she said she had mental breakdown for almost 6 weeks. She couldn't do anything, right? And all what the parents knew was that she was mentally down. Okay, but the parents did not actually understand. And she used to tell the parents that maybe it was a stress of studies, being in a first year and all of that. But the parents did not actually understand the state and the condition that child was living in. So the first day we went there, our team went there, we cleaned that girl's house, and it felt like Christmas. For, in fact, if I could describe it like that, it felt so good. She said to me that she hasn't seen her table, she hasn't seen her floor, for over 2 months. And then I'm thinking, that parent, where that parent is, that parent should actually maybe be proud now, telling people that, what, my daughter is in university so and so and so. My daughter is studying medicine and wants to become a doctor and so and so and so. But you don't know that child is living in dump. And the reason why that child is living in dump may be because you did not actually give that child the opportunity to actually do basic things like that, where, I don't know, sometimes we again, things like that, maybe we'll blame parents, but sometimes there's a situation where you teach the child to do it, but then the child decide not to do it, but then at the end of the day, you're asking about, if that child, that sort of condition, how are you going to explain yourself as a parent? So it felt, for me, I think when I'm talking about that, this is just a start of thing that we're feeling like we need to teach our children basic skills, or those skills, or teach them that independence, that, hey, if you go out there, this is the state that you are. If you live in this type of environment, these are the effects and all of that. And this is the importance of you, So yeah, that is just my bit. I know, again, I always talk and come back to death and rubbish. Maybe that's my own. but at least at least that makes sense in a way.
Yeah, I think, sometimes it can be very tricky. But anyway, every household has their own unique way of doing things. But we have talked about this survival parenting, which is coming from a place of fear. And it can be very tricky because it is common to associate wealth to thriving, but it's not the case.
Yeah.
Because you might see wealthy people who are just surviving. Yes, they have the wealth to buy anything they want, but they cannot buy happiness. They cannot buy emotional stability.
Yeah.
So then that becomes tricky, what we mean by thriving. I think for thriving is the wholeness, how you feel, that happiness in general, and not just momentary happiness, because we know happiness is a state, but then it is internal. We know we'll have ups and downs. So when we talk about the surviving, it is very
Mhm.
tricky because you will, I think it's easy to be judgmental that
Mhm.
people who are surviving, there are those on low income and things like that. But that's not the case. And like in my role as a social worker, it is very tricky. Like when when we have referrals, there are very few referrals that come in from wealthy families. And sometimes when you go into wealthy families, it's really tricky because like you go in, they have these very expensive things. Some of them, the houses are immaculate clean and things like that. But then when you walk in, you start questioning yourself. Does a
Yeah.
child live in this house? If a child lives in this house, why is the house so tidy? Is it
Yeah.
so you start questioning because there's the expectation that if a child lives somewhere, at least you'll find like a toy lying somewhere that is not meant to be and things like that. But then, how do you differentiate? Are they thriving or are they surviving?
It
So
is
it
it is
becomes
difficult.
tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky.
Yeah.
It is tricky. And I just feel that it is for each individual parent to actually understand whether they are parenting on surviving mode. And like I always say, if we know, if we value our children and the love that we have for our children, we are parenting our children, not just the fact that they are going to stay with us forever. We are parenting them. Very soon they're going to be move, they're going to become adults and they're going to move and they're going to live their own life. And the legacy of our parenting style is going to keep playing in their life. If it was a positive legacy, then of course they're going to enjoy it. But if we leave them with a negative legacy, then that is something that we're leaving them with. It's like a burden on their neck. And to be honest with you, that is something that they might even pass it down to their own, to our grandchildren, if they are not careful or if they don't flip it round and say, you know what, no, I'm not going to parent the same way my parent parented me. So this is a thing that is very important, especially from our own African Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean community, where we need to be conscious of the parenting style. Look, it's not, you said something then, Nelly, and that is very pertinent because again, people will make us feel like if we are poor, that means our parenting style is surviving. That is a lie. Somebody may be poor, somebody may just have a normal roof over their head. Somebody may just even have a loaf of bread and some can of baked beans. But when they prepare that loaf of bread and a can of baked beans, the connection that they will have to eat that can of bread and that loaf, I mean, that kind of what beans and loaf of, they will eat it with such love and connection with their children. And that is what matters over any exquisite banquet, that will be prepared, on by a five-star chef or whatever. So this is the differentiation. That connection, that connectivity, that love, that conversation that you're having with your children over that kind of baked beans is even more important. Right, it's more important. You were talking about emotion, that we need to talk about emotions. That is where some of those conversations can come in. You are having your kind of baked beans and a loaf of bread, but you're having meaningful conversations that child is not just going to hear, that child is going to carry it with them wherever they go. And this is where that emotions and that connectivity is being built. So it's about the mindset, and we need to change that mindset.
Yeah, and just to add to something that you've said, that
Mm.
our children, that I mean, we have carried things from our parents, passed them to
Mhm.
our children will pass them on to grandchildren and things like that. When you look at it, it's really, really common because sometimes you will hear a parent saying that,
Mhm.
oh, my mom or my dad used to say this, do this, and I didn't like it. But guess what? I've turned out to be like them. I said, which, which is which is common because that inner voice, you have
Yeah.
taken on the inner voice of that parent, and
Mhm.
then you have unconsciously become your parent. And that's the
Yeah.
same thing your child will do, and it will continue. So then it's for us. I say thanks to technology that we are here living miles apart, but we can talk.
Yeah.
We can still communicate with people who are thousands of miles away. And it is for us now to start making those changes. However, we know how change is difficult. Some people
Mm.
are still adamant that that is how I was parented, that is how I was brought up. And my
Mm.
children need to be brought up that way. I need to bring up my children in the same way. But then forgetting that there's the evolution, things have changed.
Mm.
And even we have talked about emotions. Some are still, there's still the misinformation that emotions are for those in the Western world. And you are thinking, like now, people will say, oh, this person. So if an incident happens, you hear it's common for people to say, oh, this person was a good and loving person. Wherever this behavior came from, I could not imagine or understand. No, it's because you are not talking the essentials, because there are always signals. Even if
Mm.
someone displays a critical behavior, that person started slowly, small. Probably they were
Mm.
seeking for help, but because human beings are so selective, we ignored the red flags that that person was exhibiting. And then till the person got to crisis, and
Yeah.
he or they, I keep saying he, is not just he, they did what they did. So when I hear that, I'm just like, what is the real
Mm.
story? Because that's normally not the real story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are 17 minutes past. I think, the second and third point on our list is identify ways to support our children emotional and personal growth, and then learn how to create a balanced, nurturing environment. I think some of the points that we're going to talk is going to overlap anyway.
Yeah,
So
we've already
uh,
talked about some of them.
yeah, we've already talked about some of them. So some of the points I've got here, the first thing we talk about emotional intelligence and regulation, and that is what we've been talking about. So it's about making sure that we name emotions and we validate feelings. Again, I think Nelly, we've talked about this thing so many times that when children
Yeah.
come to us sometimes to, talk to us, it's about listening and making sure that we actually teach our children to call the feelings by their name. Because sometimes if our children don't learn, in fact, am I even talking about children, even us parents, if we don't learn to know, I never used to know the difference between frustration and anger. I never, so so sometimes you may be angry and then you're saying that no, I'm frustrated. No, you have to call that emotion by its name, because it is by identifying that emotion that you can be able to deal with that emotion in the right way. So, and about validating feelings, we should not, when a child comes to us, it's not about dismissing their feelings, it's about that feeling may sound a little bit odd to you, but it means a lot to them. It's about validating their feeling. And even if we don't have the skills at that moment to deal with that feeling that child is expressing, tell them that you're going to come back and have a chat with them about it. And even if you don't know that we are in a technology age today, just go on ChatGPT or go to on Google and say, what, how can I deal with this? You're going to get material and you're going to get some tips in a way that you can actually have an effective conversation with your child about that thing that child mentioned to you. Because if you learn to validate their feelings, then it will encourage them to come and talk to you more whenever if they're struggling. And then again, we need to teach them coping strategies, what we talk about. And again, the coping strategies, again, is something that we ourselves need to learn the coping strategy. Because if we don't learn how to also regulate our feelings, the first thing when that child comes to tell you about something, especially if you were not expecting, the first thing, if you don't know how to regulate your own feeling, you're going to flip. And the response that you're going to give at that very moment, it will either shield that child, either make that child to shut down, so it's very important that we teach them, coping strategy more, whether like the breathing technique or, my son said the other way, just blow the bubble. Is it blowing bubble? And I was like, what, blowing bubble? And you're like, no, just blow. How do you blow bubble? And I was like, okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, and then also let's encourage our children to develop independence. Give
Yeah.
them age-appropriate choices because sometimes parents want to do everything for the child, which is not
Yeah.
good. Even from a very young age, give child that autonomy. Let them be able to make choices on what they want to do, even like what clothes they want to wear, what pair of shoes they
Mm-hmm.
want to wear, or socks or food they want to eat. Just give them. Because when they do that, they start feeling that, yes, their views are really important. Their parents consider their opinion and they feel that they are valued. Just it might look small, but it's very, very important. And then create time for connection. Like Peggy
Yeah.
talked about meal times. Yes, if it's meal times, you can say, please, all phones away, and let's have that time to, while we are talking, while we are eating, we are talking. It might not be serious talk, just the informal conversations, but
Mm-hmm.
when everyone is relaxed, a lot of things come out, unlike when it's very formal. So just have a prioritize that connection time, even if it's say story time, just have story time or movie time, just have something that you and your family will spend time together to bond with each other and
Mm-hmm.
putting all distractions away.
Yeah. Yeah, and another point that is here is about boosting personal and emotional, sorry, boosting personal growth and self-esteem, which I think it will touch a little bit of what you've talked about, where it's about, well, you've already talked about encourage independent. It's about another point, it's about supporting their hobbies and their passion. Sometimes a child may grow up and say, you know what, they might want to play football or they want to, rather than just dismissing them or not encourage them, we need to give them the opportunity. Let them go and do it. If it is something that is within them, encourage them. If it's about dropping them, picking them, or providing alternative how they can get there, we need to make sure we encourage that their hobbies. And because wherever they're going to learn sport, mind they learn some skills there as well, and that skill is going to form part of that their development, and those skills they're going to take it with them. And then we need to also focus on effort over outcome. Oh, God help me with this one. Because I know that sometimes, sometimes again, we've talked about parents where we're focusing only on the outcome, and the outcome. I want you to do this. I want you to perform this. I want you to get this. I want you to da. But we're not focusing on the effort, right? The effort that they are making. And sometimes when we focus on the outcome, we forget to show gratitude for the effort that they make. And when we forget to show gratitude for the effort that they make, they may not be able to actually give the outcome that we're looking for. So it's about making sure that no matter the effort, the little effort that they've made, let us show gratitude, be happy, be grateful, thank them, praise them. We praise them more for the little, then they'll want to do more. And then another point on that is about setting clear boundaries, because I feel that we've talked about boundaries so many times. And I know that some parents feel like, oh no, I'm going to start setting boundaries or start setting certain boundaries when they are certain age. No, you start setting boundaries from very, very young age. But of course, let the boundaries be age appropriate. Because if we leave it too late and then they get to that point where and we want to start setting boundaries at what age, it's not going to stick. They're not going to respect it. And so it's very important that we start setting those boundaries, age appropriate boundaries, and start changing them. And let us remember, I'm saying this also to myself, that as the kids are growing and getting to a certain age, we need to be changing the boundaries, because the boundaries that we set for them when they were 12 years old, when they turn 15, that boundaries need to be upgraded or shifted. We should not be sticking to that boundaries when they were 12. So that so
Yeah,
that's another important thing that we need to take. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah. And when we put those boundaries, we need to be consistent.
definitely. Definitely. So I think another point, I don't know whether Nelly, there's another point here we talk about build supportive connection. I don't know whether it's you have something on your book, in connection with that.
I have created a balanced, nurturing environment, which I think we've talked about
Yes.
this many times, and
Yes.
which is the oh, you went to the third point already.
No, I think both of them actually overlaps, to be honest with you. The
Okay,
second and the third point the overlap. So we're
the
just
overlap.
talking,
Okay,
yeah.
so we've been talking a lot about providing or creating a nurturing environment. So there's something called psychological safety, which those who are watching, if they don't know what psychological safety is, it's just what Peggy and myself have been talking about, that when you make a child feel that they are valued, feel comfortable, the child psychologically, they feel that they are safe. And when they are safe, they don't need to hide anything. They don't need to tell lies. They just be themselves. And it's for parents to provide that kind of safe space for their children, for their family, so that they can just be themselves. And open communication. I don't know how many times we've talked about open communication. And we talk about this because in the Afro-Caribbean community, communication is a problem, a massive problem, because parents want their children to be obedient. And when you look at it, it's coming from that survival parenting, because they don't want their children to question them or to challenge them. They will label the child as being disrespectful. Is down to the communication, because children do not understand what we as parents understand. Like, I'll just share an example that happened today. Okay, so I went out on my appointment today. When I came, or in the morning before I left, there was nice weather. So I had done some washing. I put the clothes on the dry line outside, went for my appointment. When I came back, just as I got into the house, looked through the kitchen window, the line had cut. So the clothes were just on the line that had fallen on the ground. My son was in the garden playing football. And as I just put my bag, I went out. I was like, so he saw me, greeted me, and I was like, when did you know that the line had cut? He was like, yeah, he saw it. I said, then what did you do about it? He said, Mom, I saw it, but I did not know what to do. That's why I just left it. And I was like, what? You saw and you did not know what to do with. So it is that kind of thing that we assume, or I assume that he could have known what to do. But then when he asked me that question, I was like, oh yeah, that was the first experience. He has never seen the drying line cut. So he didn't know what to do. So I was like, okay, come here. I said, hold the line. And I was trying to tie it together, and he held the line. I said, next time, when you see it like that, pick the clothes, okay? It was like, okay. So you see, sometimes we make a lot of assumptions, but it was just simple. And to me, I would straight away know that if the line is cut, I'll either try to fix it or I just take in the clothes bed. Anyway, so is to have that.
That's a kid for today. Sometimes most of them, sometimes this is where we talk about common sense, and those common sense. Sometimes when our parents used to, in one way or the other, we learn the hard way, but we learn to take initiative. We learn things like that common sense by second nature, that these things happen. This is what. But our children of today, unfortunately, they don't have it. If they're like robots, if you don't tell them that do this, when this thing happen, do like this or do, they will not go out of their way to say, you know what, let me just pick this clothes and just keep it away from my mom to even come and tell me what will happen to nah. So yeah, so we talk about again, practical emotional tool, which we're rounding up. We've got 1 minute to go. We talk about using, in fact, active listening. We've got communication. I've also got active listening, because sometimes as parents we may communicate, we may talk communication is both way. You talk and the other person. If we're not listening, if we're just ready to talk, then we may not listen. And when we talk about listening, active listening, it's about listening, watching the non-verbal cues or the what that child is not saying, and again, this thing sometimes it doesn't come naturally. We need to learn some of these skills. We need to learn it. And like I say, Nelly and I, in fact, we're still learning. And I always say it's about knowing that I need these skills as a parent. So I've got to go an extra mile to learn it. How to communicate with my children, how to listen actively. And then we talked about we'll talk about encouraging physical activity, and then routine. That's another one that I wanted to talk about. We talk about routine. We need to actually, thriving parenting will also involve routine, where that child has got a routine. And if you as a parent as well doesn't have a routine, how are you going to even teach that child? Because like we say, most of the things that our children will pick, whether we like it or not, they'll pick it from our own lifestyle, the way they're observing us. Even though they may have their own way of life, they may deviate and do their own thing, or think their own way, which is okay. But at the end of the day, as a parent, all I can say is that, okay, I am conscious, or I am happy that at least I have parented them in the best way I can, So it's about just making sure that the first thing is just to be conscious and keep asking ourselves every day. And when you're asking yourself, it's not about feeling guilt, like, oh no, maybe I failed, or maybe I should have. If you should have, forget about the should have, or what didn't happen. This is the moment right here and now. What is it that you're going to do differently to make sure that you're doing it right? Because again, we are all learning, and it's about learning something today and say, you know what, okay, I've picked something which is not right. I'm going to change from that thing, to do it right. So every day is an opportunity for a change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just to sum it up, I'll not go into detail, just to sum it up, like we've said in previous videos, in previous sessions, children don't want a perfect parent. They just want
Mm,
a parent who is present,
yeah.
not just physically, but present emotionally. Because
Mm-hmm.
children naturally will want to please their parents, but let parents not take it from their own struggles and impose it on their children unknowingly, whether knowingly or unknowingly, because it affects the child not just in their young ages, but they carry that on to their adult ages, and
Mhm.
they live miserable lives, and they just survive because that's the language they have learned and lived their whole life. So as parents, even if you have been surviving your whole life, just take a pause, stop and start questioning yourself. Just question everything, because all of it is in your head. You can change it. So give
Mhm.
yourself the chance to remember or to unlearn, relearn whatever you have learned in the past. Because
Mhm.
the good thing is, science has taught us that the mind is very plastic. You can stretch it, you can shrink it, so we can learn regardless of our ages. I think it's just the willingness. If you want to, then you will do it. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best. Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice week and you take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.